Chapter 29. The Children of Hybris Arrival, Part 2. The dense jungle air, thick with humidity, enveloped the party as their feet touched the soil of the Nythari village. Birds chirped above, their calls echoing through the towering trees, but it was the soft rustling of the jungle that seemed to part in reverence for their arrival. The ground was a patchwork of rich, dark earth, leafy canopies, and scattered rays of sunlight piercing through the overgrown treetops. The Nythari had come to greet them. Candice led the group down the narrow, winding paths that cut through the lush greenery of the jungle, her heart filled with a mixture of familiarity and nervousness. The village stood in harmony with nature, a sanctuary carved into the landscape with natural structures woven from vines, wood, and stone. Tree houses adorned the high branches, blending seamlessly with the surroundings, while the village's elders, with their sharp amber eyes and steady movements, watched from their porches as if in quiet judgment. The arrival of the Queen of Elves was met with reverence. Word had quickly spread throughout the village, and soon a procession of Nythari villagers emerged from their homes, carrying makeshift gifts of fruit, woven textiles, and hand-carved trinkets, offering them to the Queen as a mark of respect. Candice, though not one for formalities, stood beside Aphyrosia with a quiet pride. She was no stranger to her people's customs, but seeing the way they looked upon Aphyrosia, their monarch, their guiding light, was humbling. Aphyrosia, regal and composed as always, accepted their gestures with graceful nods and smiles, her emerald eyes softening under the weight of their admiration. She stood as a beacon of power and peace, the very air around her humming with the subtle energy of the forest that seemed to recognize her as one of its own. Jarek, ever the quiet observer, stood at the edge of the group, his face somber. His tall frame cast a long shadow as he approached the Children of Hybris. With a deep bow to the Queen, he addressed the group. "It has been an honor," he said, his voice steady but carrying a hint of sadness, "to travel alongside you. The time has come for me to return to the deeper reaches of the jungle. I leave you in the capable hands of your guides." He looked to Candice, giving her a final, lingering glance of silent understanding. The villagers, sensing the momentous occasion, murmured softly, but the energy in the air was alive with anticipation. They had heard whispers of the Children of Hybris, the ancient figures spoken of in their elders' stories, and now they were in their midst. Candice, sensing the rising curiosity, turned to face her tribe. "These are the Children of Hybris," she said, her voice echoing through the clearing, "from the tribe's oldest legends. They have come to fulfill their destiny." The elder elf who had spoken earlier, a stoic figure with silver hair and deep-set eyes, stepped forward. He eyed the group with both awe and skepticism. "The legends spoke of the Children of Hybris as powerful as gods," he said, his voice carrying an ancient weight. "Tell us, how will you prove this?" The air grew thick with the pressure of expectation. The villagers were silent, their eyes fixed on the group, waiting for a sign, a symbol, a demonstration of the prophecy. Mina exchanged a glance with Lucas, their telepathic bond connecting instantly. Without a word, they knew what had to be done. With a subtle flick of her wrist, Mina motioned toward a collection of large rocks at the edge of the village. Lucas, eyes narrowed in focus, extended his hand toward the stones. His fingers twitched, and with an almost imperceptible hum, the rocks lifted into the air, hovering before the gathered Nythari. The crowd gasped, their gazes widening with awe. Mina leaped forward, her movements swift as the wind. She used the levitating stones as stepping platforms, jumping from one to the next with a fluid grace that left the onlookers in stunned silence. Her speed was blinding, her agility unmatched as she ascended higher and higher, her bare feet barely grazing the stones as she reached a height that would have been impossible for any ordinary being. She landed lightly, her feet touching the ground with a soft thud, her landing perfectly softened by the telekinetic force Lucas had subtly maintained, ensuring her descent was as smooth as it had been graceful. The crowd erupted in a cheer, their voices chanting the old legends. The words of the prophecy seemed to breathe life around them, as the villagers, old and young alike, spoke the names of the Children of Hybris in reverent awe, repeating tales of gods and heroes. The village hummed with newfound energy, the chants echoing through the trees and reaching the very heart of the mountain. But as the celebrations swelled, a sudden shift in the atmosphere drew everyone's attention. An older elf, his face marked by time and wisdom, stepped forward. His eyes were serious, his gaze cutting through the revelry. "I warn you," he said, his voice deep and low, "there is a darkness that has entered our lands. A strange man, one with no allegiance to our people, has ventured into the mountains seeking knowledge of a hidden temple. He travels alone, and his intentions are unclear. If he reaches the temple, it could mean great danger for us all." A chill ran through the group, but it was Candice who spoke first, her voice steady. "We must find him before he causes any more harm." The elder, Aria, nodded gravely. "You will have to move quickly. There are places you must visit over the next 2 days to gain the knowledge you seek. The mountain will show you the path, but be prepared for what lies ahead. The temple is not a place for the unworthy. Only those who truly understand the prophecy can uncover its secrets." The group exchanged wary looks, their mission now entwined with an unexpected urgency. The mountain, once a place of pilgrimage and reverence, had now become a land of hidden dangers. The path forward was uncertain, but one thing was clear: their journey had just taken a darker turn. The warm glow of the lantern cast long shadows across the wooden walls of Aria's hut. Around the modest table the group sat attentively, their focus drawn to the commanding presence of the Queen of Elves. Aphrosia's piercing green eyes scanned the room, her silver hair shimmering like woven moonlight. The air felt heavy with her next words. "We must ascend the mountain and reach Ceylan," she declared, her voice calm yet resolute. "The path will not be easy, but time is against us. His wisdom is crucial to unraveling the prophecy." Her gaze settled on Lucas. A faint, knowing smile played on her lips. "Lucas, have you been trying to read my mind to know my true intentions?" Lucas's cheeks flushed as he stammered, "No, Your Majesty, I wouldn't dare." He cast his eyes downward, unable to meet her amused expression. Mina nudged him playfully, though her telepathic voice teased, "You really need to work on your poker face." Breaking the moment, Candice straightened in her seat. "I'll guide you. The climb to Ceylan's cave takes 5 to 6 hours if we keep a steady pace. We'll need to leave soon and return before nightfall. The winds turn treacherous after dusk." Aria's expression darkened as she interjected, "Candice, recent tremors have disturbed the mountain. Avalanches have become more frequent, and the usual paths might not be safe." Candice nodded thoughtfully. "I'll check with Eryndor, the local hunter. He knows the mountain's conditions better than anyone. If there are blocked paths or fresh dangers, he'll have the latest information." Aria leaned forward, her voice lowering. "There are places you should visit, Candice, either on this journey or the next. The temple on the eastern slope, guarded by Vermicalis and his warriors, is worth your attention. I suspect the stranger is searching for it, though he may already be lost. Or worse. And there are 3 villages on the route to Vermicalis' stronghold. They might hold secrets or allies." Candice's brow furrowed. "And the beast's lair? The one you used to warn me about?" Aria chuckled, a wistful smile softening her features. "You're no child anymore, Candice. That lair high on the northern cliffs might contain artifacts stolen over centuries. If you have the courage, it's worth exploring. But tread carefully. The stories of its guardian are not mere fables." The room fell silent for a moment as the gravity of their task settled over them. Finally, Candice stood. "Tomorrow we'll visit the villages. Today we prepare for Ceylan's cave. Let's get our gear ready." Aria's gaze softened as she watched Candice rally the group. "You remind me so much of your mother," she said quietly. "She had the same determination, the same fire when she led us through dark times." The room grew lighter as Aria shared nostalgic memories, counting how she could once climb the Watcher's treacherous paths in under 2 hours. Mina, her competitive nature piqued, couldn't help but mutter, "I could do it faster." Realizing she'd spoken aloud, Mina turned bright red and buried her face against Lucas's shoulder. The room erupted in laughter, even Lucas joining in both aloud and telepathically. "You're adorable when you're embarrassed," he teased, earning a glare from Mina that promised retribution. As the group began gathering their equipment, Aria gestured for them to stay. "Before you leave, "Let me share a story," she said, her tone turning serious. "It's a legend passed from mother to daughter, dating back over 15 centuries. Perhaps it will guide your steps, or at least give you something to think about on the climb." The group settled back into their seats, the flickering lantern casting their expectant faces in a warm glow. Aria leaned forward, her voice dropping to a near whisper as she began to weave her tale. The room fell silent, save for the soft crackle of the lantern's flame. Aria's hands, weathered yet steady, traced the carved patterns of the table before her as she began. Long ago, when the Watcher first rose from the earth, it was not a mountain but a being, a sentinel born of stone and spirit. The Nythari, our ancestors, lived in harmony with the land, guided by the Watcher's wisdom. It is said that the Watcher could see the threads of fate, weaving them into the lives of all who sought its counsel. But as with all things, peace attracted envy. From the farthest reaches of the world came an empire, hungering for the Watcher's power. They sought to bind it, to twist its sight for their gain. The Nythari, knowing they could not defeat such might, pleaded with the Watcher for guidance. The Watcher did not speak, but instead cast its gaze to the heavens, where the stars answered. A chosen few were gifted with its essence, children of the Watcher tasked to protect its legacy. Each child bore a fragment of its sight, their hearts bound to the mountain and their spirits tied to the land. But the price of this gift was great. The chosen ones could never linger long in one place, their destinies pulling them toward an endless horizon. They carried the weight of hope and despair, of light and shadow. Their names are lost to time, but their deeds live in the wind that whispers through these peaks and the roots that grasp the earth below. Aria's voice grew softer, almost a murmur, as if she were channeling the memory itself. Her eyes seemed distant, her hands moving with purpose as she began arranging trinkets and flowers gathered from the corners of her hut. Sprigs of lavender and mountain sage, a polished hawk-shaped stone, and an iridescent feather were laid carefully in a circle. "The Watcher's final gift," Aria continued, her voice tinged with an ethereal quality, "was not strength but resilience. For it is resilience that shapes the unyielding rock and guides the flowing river. And so, when the winds howl and the path is uncertain, remember this: the Watcher's spirit lives in those who dare to climb, to seek, to believe." Aria closed her eyes and began a soft chant, her voice lilting like a melody carried by the breeze. "Watcher of stone, keeper of sky, grant us strength as days go by. With hearts unyielding, spirits high, guide us forward, hear our cry." The group watched in reverence as the atmosphere shifted, not with dazzling lights or grand displays, but with a deep, soothing calm. The aroma of lavender and sage filled the air, and the faint rustle of unseen leaves seemed to echo Aria's chant. The trinkets and flowers glowed faintly, not with light, but with a sense of connection, as if they carried the weight of countless blessings whispered through generations. As the chant faded, Aria opened her eyes, her gaze sweeping over the party. Her voice, now steady and warm, broke the silence. "This ritual is not magic in the way you think of it. It is a reminder, a call to your heart and spirit. You carry the resilience of the Watcher within you. Let it guide you." The group sat in admiration, their spirits lifted. Mina, usually quick to quip, found herself speechless, her green eyes wide with awe. Thomas gave a solemn nod, his respect for Aria evident. Lucas looked down at the relic bound to his wrist, as if seeing it in a new light. Even Candice, the ever-confident guide, seemed humbled, her thoughts clearly drifting to the weight of her mission. For a moment they were no longer a band of travelers burdened by prophecy, but a unified force, their resolve renewed by the ancient wisdom of the Nythari. The Watcher awaited, and they would be ready. The air hung heavy with the scent of pine and damp earth as Candice stood at the threshold of Eryndor's humble hut. The hunter, a guardian of the Nythari people, squinted into the bright sunlight filtering through the dense jungle canopy. His sharp, weathered features twitched with an unusual expression, disbelief mixed with reverence. The Queen of Elves, Aphyrosia herself, stood before him, her presence as commanding as the mountain that loomed in the distance. "Eryndor," Candice said gently, her voice steady despite the weight of the moment. "I need to know about the passes to the middle slope of the Watcher. What can we expect?" The hunter hesitated, his gaze flickering between Candice and the Queen, before nodding. The main pass, the Pass of the Hawk, should be clear. I've heard no reports of blockages or danger there, but the Pass of the Fox? He shook his head. Snow has buried much of it, especially the crevasse section. It's impassable unless you're looking to meet your end. As for the Pass of the Bear, it's navigable, but the path is strewn with debris, fallen trees, loose rocks. It'll be slow and treacherous. Candice absorbed the information, her brow furrowing. The Pass of the Hawk it is, then. Eryndor's gruff demeanor softened as he stepped closer. Good luck to you, Candice. To all of you, he said, his voice carrying a rare warmth. The Children of Hybris have the blessings of the Nythari people. The group exchanged solemn nods as they turned to leave. Candice glanced back once, catching Eryndor's small wave, a gesture of quiet encouragement. The mountain loomed above them, its mist-shrouded peak barely visible against the bright sky. At the southern edge of the village, a small group of elders and children gathered to see them off. They brought gifts, woven charms, dried herbs, and small pouches of supplies. Each gift was a symbol of hope and faith in the group's mission. The elders murmured words of encouragement, their voices blending into a melodic chant that carried the weight of ancient traditions. Candice knelt to accept a charm from a young girl, her small hands trembling as she offered it. For luck, the child whispered. Thank you, Candice replied, her voice soft yet firm. She tucked the charm into her pouch, her heart swelling with a mixture of pride and apprehension. As the group turned to face the mountain, she felt a pull, a deep, inexplicable call from the Watcher itself. It was as though the mountain was alive, its spirit awakening in response to their presence. The path ahead was steep and rugged, but Candice led with confidence, her steps steady and deliberate. Behind her, the group followed in a loose line, Lucas and Mina exchanging quiet, teasing thoughts through their telepathic bond, Thomas scanning the terrain with a protective gaze, and the Queen walking with an air of serene authority. Dira and Altheris brought up the rear, their expressions tense but resolute. As they climbed, the Queen's thoughts drifted to Ceylan. It had been 50 years since their first meeting, and she still remembered the sharp clarity of his mind, his wisdom flowing like an unending river. But time had not been kind to him. His sacrifices, the toll of his spiritual connection to the Watcher, had left him a shadow of his former self. The last time she ascended these slopes to consult him, his words had often wandered into incoherent tangents, and his once bright eyes were clouded with confusion. Aphyrosia sighed, the weight of her memories pressing against her chest. She had seen many lives wax and wane during her long reign, but Ceylan's decline was a unique sorrow. He had given so much to protect the balance, to guide those who sought the Watcher's wisdom. His life had been one of sacrifice, and she knew it would end the same way. Yet, even in his diminished state, his role was far from over. The Children of Hybris needed him, as did Candice. The Queen glanced at Candice's back as the younger woman led the way, her movements purposeful and determined. She saw in Candice a reflection of her mother's fire, a fierce will tempered by duty. Aphyrosia silently vowed to see this mission through, not just for the prophecy, but for the legacy of the Nythari people. A bit higher up the trail, a subtle tremor ran through the earth. The group paused, their expressions shifting from curiosity to concern as the tremor grew into a small earthquake. Stones tumbled from the cliffs above, and the air filled with the sound of shifting earth and rustling leaves. Lucas steadied himself against a tree, his eyes wide. Is this normal? Not really, Candice replied, her voice firm despite the unease prickling at her spine. But earthquakes aren't unheard of here. It feels like a sign, Mina said, her voice calm but tinged with awe. She glanced at Lucas, their telepathic bond buzzing with shared thoughts. The Watcher knows we're coming. Thomas scowled, his protective instincts flaring. Or it's a warning. Either way, we need to stay sharp. Candice stepped forward, her voice cutting through the tension. Whatever it means, we're not turning back. The Watcher is calling, and we have to answer. The group pressed on, the tremor fading into an uneasy memory. As the path grew steeper, the air turned colder, the jungle thinning to reveal rocky outcrops and sparse vegetation. The energy of the mountain seemed to thrum beneath their feet, a constant reminder of the sacred ground they were treading. By the time they reached a plateau where they could rest, the sun was starting to get lower in the sky. The group sat in a loose circle, their breaths misting in the chill air. Candice distributed the gifts from the villagers, a small token for each person to carry as a reminder of the faith placed in them. The queen held her charm, a delicate carving of a mountain hawk, with a quiet reverence. She thought of Ceylan again, of the wisdom he might still offer despite his decline. Her gaze drifted to Lucas and Mina, the children of Hybris, who bore the weight of the prophecy with a mixture of youthful resilience and uncertainty. She knew their journey was only beginning, and the trials ahead would test them in ways they could not yet imagine. Candice's voice broke the silence. "We'll reach the Watcher's Cave by the start of evening if we keep moving. Let's rest for a few more minutes, then continue." The group nodded, their resolve unshaken despite the challenges ahead. As they prepared to resume their climb, the queen stood, her gaze fixed on the mountain's peak. The air around her seemed to shimmer, the faintest whisper of ancient magic stirring in response to her presence. "Ceylan awaits us," she said, her voice carrying a quiet authority, "and the Watcher watches still." With that, the group rose, their spirits buoyed by the queen's words. Together, they continued their ascent, the mountain's secrets waiting to be revealed.